So good evening, everybody. One of the first principles of Seishin. This is Seishin. This is a Zen retreat. Is to follow the schedule. So this was I like trying to stay on schedule, and it's nice because we have a wonderful retreat guide. But I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, so let me pull back a minute. First of all, I want to say, really good to see you all. I'm so glad that you are here. I want to welcome you to the 11th annual STO retreat. We do a major retreat every year, and we incorporate with that our annual conference where we talk about STO, how STO is doing, how we are doing, and we will have, we start the retreat tonight and we go all the way until Sunday at noon. The next 3 days will be filled with Zazen. It will be filled with many speakers, which will be very inspirational. And on Saturday, we will carve out part of the day to have actually a conference and our annual meeting. And I very much invite all of you to attend. I think you'll find the discussion in the morning very interesting about what is STO doing, how are we trying to promote Zen practice in this country and beyond. So anyway, just a broad sketch of what lies ahead for the next few days. I thought it would be useful just to make sure. I think once you have looked at the retreat guide, you have basically everything you need right here. Whether you have the hard copy version, which is really good, but you also need to be online with it so that there's a lot of links going to other documents, other chants that we are going to be doing. And so, we are basically, one thing that is linked here is the pre-retreat survey. So this is your opportunity to go and give us some information about what you're interested in, how we are doing, things like that. That is very much appreciated. And so if you haven't already, please go out and do the pre-retreat survey. We also have several resources on what is Zen practice, how to practice Zazen, which I think you'll find very interesting. And we'll talk about this more throughout the retreat. But if you're a little bit new to Zen practice, I think these are very valuable resources I'd like to point your attention to. We have also a communication agreement. And so this is kind of a reminder for us. I think this is a really very good document. It reminds us about what is right speech. How do we best communicate with each other? How are we best polite with each other? So I think it's got some really good ideas about how we can be most effective in our time together while we're sitting, while we are communicating, and while we're talking with each other. So of course, the schedule is in here in pretty good detail. And so always look at the schedule. We have 4 time zones that are encapsulated there. And believe it or not, we have attendees from 5 time zones. And so if the schedule seems a little odd for where you are, this is part of the reason. It's hard to get one schedule right for 5 different time zones, but make it work for you. I encourage you to do that. Whenever you find what you want to do on the schedule, what's next? Over to the right, there's the Zoom link. You click on that, it takes you right to the event and what is going on right now. Also, you probably already know that the greeters before I began, Kosets and Fusats, they are both our retreat producers. They can answer any questions, solve any problems. So if you have any technical issues or anything like that, there's information on how to reach them. There are several ways to do so. So I encourage you to do that. And also, one final thing is we will be offering Dokusan during the retreat. Dokusan is an opportunity to talk about your Zazen practice, or more broadly about your Zen practice with a teacher. And there's several of us teachers who would like to speak with you if you would like to talk about some things maybe that come up during the retreat, you'd like to clarification or that kind of thing. The way we're going to do that is Dan Jocelyn, Sungak, who's online here, he will put his phone number, make it available, probably in the chat, but that will be revealed in the morning, if not before. And you can text him and just tell him that you would like to have Dokusan and the number to text you back and your name, of course, and he will arrange it. He'll let you know when it is. And then most likely the teacher will wind up calling you at the number that you prescribed. So just something else, another resource that I think we're making available this week. Yes, and there may be clarification needed.
I just wanted to say, if you look at the chat, so at the beginning of the chat thread is some of that information on contacts and things like that. And we will try to remember to populate that at the beginning of every session, a lot of the things that Zenku just talked about.
Terrific. All right, thank you for that. Are we okay so far? Are there any questions? I can't see everybody, so if there is a question, please feel free to just say, excuse me, or a question. Otherwise, I'll assume we're good to go. So tonight, we're very enthusiastic.
Sangak has his hand up.
Just quickly, Zenku, I just
Yes.
put my email address in the chat. So those of you who might like Dokusan, simply copy that down and drop me a note.
Terrific. All right. Thank you, Sangak. Okay, I would like to move on and start talking about the theme of our retreat. We had some fun putting the retreat theme together. It sort of kept building as we went along. But we wanted, first of all, the theme is exploring the original frontier, embracing our ancestors and finding our way. So there's a lot here. And I think most of you may know that the exploring our original frontier is inspired by our abbot, Taiyun Roshi's book, The Original Frontier. And the original frontier conjures up what's the challenges in life? What is life all about? How does this break down? How do we navigate through life? And so we will look at our Zen practice, study ourselves, and help see ourselves, our true nature, more clearly through this retreat. There are several folks who will be speaking about Taiyun Roshi's book, and we will explore that more deeply. Embracing our ancestors is probably the most engaging of the themes, of the sub-themes. We have many ancestors from all the way back to the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and many people who will be speaking in the coming days will be talking about different ancestors, their teachings, their wisdom. And so this will be a good nourishment for us and for our Zazen as we practice through the rest of this week. Finding our way, is kind of a fundamental principle. And this is really what Zen is all about. How do we find our way in life? This is the basis of Zen practice. This is what the historical Buddha taught about why are we causing problems for ourselves? How do we let go of that delusionary problems that we are creating? And how do we move forward and affirm our true nature, our true complete nature? So through this retreat, let's apply this guidance that we get from our speakers and from our Zazen So let's apply this guidance and wisdom in our Zen practice for the benefit of all. You know, throughout this retreat, we will be exploring and deepening our Zen practice. Grounded in our Zazen, our presenters will help us navigate and help us find our true way forward. So that's basically our overarching theme, and you will see that echoed, I think, time and time again. And I'll be very interested to see how this cacophony of expressing this theme keeps playing out day after day as we proceed. I'm very excited about it. So tonight's talk, I decided to talk about, and the title I gave it was Finding Our Way. This is kind of I'm very fond of this expression. And to me, it's a takeoff from moment to moment, we find our way. This is a Zen expression that really defines Zen practice. Moment to moment, we find our way. You know, I think we should look at that just for a moment and realize how true this is. Or maybe we don't see it as true. And so that's also interesting. But fundamentally, you know, we play games with ourselves that we think we're living in the future. We plan for the future. We regurgitate the past and try to learn from the past. But reality says this moment is what's happening. So whether we are fully engaged in this moment or whether we are daydreaming in this moment and more concentrated on the future, of course, that's our choice. But nevertheless, we're always in this moment. So Zen practice is most fundamental and most important for us to learn to be skillful navigators of this moment. So finding our way moment to moment, this is our Zen practice. So this retreat for me, I say to you, is very much about helping us find our way forward. You know, how do we deepen our practice? How do we create less suffering in the world and for ourselves? So what I'd like to do tonight, I would like to pretty much focus on one of my favorite ancestors. And this would be Kango Roshi. And let me tell you a little bit about him in a nutshell. Daigaku Kango Langlois Roshi, he was Matsuoka Roshi's first Dharma heir. He was the first person that Matsuoka Roshi ordained as a priest and transmitted to him so that he could be a full teacher himself. And I'll talk a little more about that in a moment. He was also one of the first Americans ever to receive a Dharma transmission and be a fully certified priest. He is one of the most recent Matsuoka lineage Zen ancestors. He passed just a few years ago. And he was my first teacher. I studied with him from 1970 until early 1970s until 1999. So in the next few minutes, I'd like to share with you some of Kango Roshi's background, some of his teachings to help us find our way. So I first got to know Kango Roshi. I was living in Southern Illinois, way down south, and there was some accents down there, by the way. But Kango Roshi was up in Chicago. I had a friend who became a student of Kango Roshi before I did, and so my communication with him drew me to come to Chicago to visit, come to a retreat, and get to know Kango Roshi a little by little. And then one time, we had started a small Zen group in Carbondale at the Southern Illinois University. And Kango Roshi brought some of his disciples down, and we had a weekend retreat, and we got to hang out with Kango Roshi, get to know him better. And so little by little, I'm getting to know him more and more. And it basically dawns on me that it was very important for me to study with him. You know, his depth of understanding, his keen interest in helping serious Zen students, and very approachable Midwestern style. It was a wonderful combination to come across in the early 70s. Most of the teachers at that time were all from Asia. Their language was a barrier. They weren't very many of them around. So to find one that was as American as the jazz piano, which he adeptly played, was quite striking. And so it was just too simpatico, too sweet for me to pass up. It was interesting because all of Kango Roshi had basically 3 teachers, which I'll talk about in a moment. All of them were from Asia, but they all came to Chicago, so he didn't have to travel. He lived in Chicago his whole life, except for 2 years when he was in the Army. And so anyway, let me just give a brief sketch about Kango Roshi so you get some idea about him. He was born in 1939, and he lived in Chicago all of his life, as I mentioned. And so he was a real Chicago boy. His first love was the piano. So he started playing music and piano when he was 10. And at a very early age, in his early teens, he became very interested in Eastern philosophy, reading Bhagavad Gita, Tao Te Ching, also other philosophers from Europe, Nietzsche and Kant. And so in this way, at an early age, you could see his interest in looking deeper at what's really going on in the world and in life. So in 1954, he was drafted. He was in the Army. He served the Battle of Louisiana and Mississippi. I'm just joking. He was stationed in Louisiana, Mississippi. And so he learned a lot about Southern culture in that he had some interesting stories. When he came out of the Army, through the GI Bill, he went to the American Conservatory of Music in Chicago. He studied classical music, but obviously, as I sort of already tipped my hand, he went on to find a real affinity and interest in improvisation. And so a lot of his career was in jazz music around the clubs in Chicago. You know, at this time, his interest in Asian philosophy became deeper and deeper. He first, in 1956, went and began studying at the Vedanta Society in Chicago. He studied first under Swami Vishwananda. He then became a disciple of another Indian teacher named Srini Rode. With Srini Rode, he included intellectual study, intense meditation practice, all the yogas with emphasis on Kundalini yoga and esoteric meditation practice. So for 3 or 4 years, that was really his focus. But inevitably, his innate tendencies for less intellectual, more direct and intuitive approach to everyday life finally brought him to Zen. And so he found Matsuoka Roshi on the north side of Chicago and began to visit the temple around 1960. And I remember speaking with him about it, and the approach of Matsuoka Roshi was so distinctly different than the intellectual approach of Srini Rode. You know, much more intuitive study, you know, much more inward study and intimate study. So he started coming regularly. In 1963, he went through Jukai, he received the precepts, and also that year he became a disciple of Matsuoka Roshi. He was given the name Kango, which means diamond, and it's strong, brilliant. It signifies the diamond sword that cuts through all ignorance and delusion. So it's a very auspicious name. He was later ordained in 67 as a Zen priest. He was given the name Daikaku, which means great enlightenment. And in 71, Matsuoka Roshi, for health reasons, decided to move to California, to Long Beach, and he left the temple to Kango Roshi, who became the abbot. And 74, Matsuoka Roshi would come back to Chicago like twice a year, and mostly during special services or things like that. But he came back in 74 and he gave Kango Dharma transmission. So he became a full brown robe priest who could have other students as well. So that's just a kind of a brief timeline about Kango Roshi. And through this whole time, Kango Roshi is going to the temple, helping Matsuoka Roshi with services, teaching, giving Zazen instruction, going out to the community, schools, promoting Zen practice, etc. And so from 71 on, when he became abbot, the makeup of the schedule kind of looked like this. First, we were on the north side of Chicago in Halstead, in Lincoln Park. And then in 1990, the temple moved to Evanston, Illinois, where it is today. But we would have 4 weekly services, 2 on Sunday, 1 on Tuesday, 1 on Thursday. And disciples would take 2 of those services, and that would be their responsibility for the week. And we would share with several disciples, would cover services. You know, we would chant before, we would do 2 40-minute periods of Zazen. We'd do 10 minutes of Kin-Hin. And then afterwards, there'd be time for tea and question and answer. There would be monthly sessions. Kango Roshi really liked to teach and give short teshos periodically during the second period of Zazen. So he would give maybe a 10 to 20-minute tesho while you were sitting in Zazen. And it was very interesting. Deshimaru, from Europe, also very much did that as well. But anyway, he would give more in-depth talks during special services that we would have throughout the year, the different holidays. And so we would continue the tradition of going out to high schools, colleges, even grade schools to teach people about Zen and what is Zen and help people understand it as part of our program. And little by little, people are coming to the temple, and the temple is growing and growing. One other influence that I wanted to mention about Kango Roshi was he was very interested in Tai Chi Chuan. And he found a teacher, Professor Ho Chi Kwang, who was a very famous Chinese boxer, meaning martial artist, and painter and calligrapher. And Kango Roshi studied privately with him Tai Chi Chuan, several styles, health methods, Chinese boxing, sword, and he gained deeper understanding of Chinese culture, including Confucianism and Taoism. And he went on to be the instructor of Tai Chi Chuan. And he actually ultimately became the director of the Chinese Cultural Academy, which Professor Ho had founded. And he took that over in 1988. So he was running both the Chinese Cultural Academy and the Zen Buddhist Temple of Chicago for a good portion of his teaching days. Unfortunately, in 1999, he came down with liver cancer, and he died in October 28th, 1999, of liver failure. And he had been at the temple as an abbot for 25 years. He had been the Chinese Cultural Academy director for 12 years, and he had been with the temple in total for about 40 years. So he made a wonderful contribution to Chicago and to the temple. And so that's really the story. And as I alluded to earlier, he would sort of comment, but he had kind of as a joke that, you know, all of my teachers, they came to me. I didn't have to go. You know, which is kind of funny, but I would say pretty unique. But it has something to say about Chicago, big place, a lot of different cultural influences, and so he felt, bottom line, he felt very fortunate that that was the circumstance that he found himself in. So I'd like to say a few things about my experience with Kango Roshi and a little bit about his teachings. Yeah, the very first thing that was very striking was as soon as I became a disciple, you know, I should say to you that my wife and I, we got married, we moved to Chicago, and I became a disciple in 1976. So that was a big year, kind of a turning point for me. And so when you become a disciple of Kango Roshi, the way he was treated by Matsuoka Roshi and the way he treated his disciples was you basically became part of the family. And so moving to Chicago, you know, it was a big step moving from the country to the, you know, the big windy city. And so it was nice to have as much support as possible. So that was very, very, very good indeed. But first and foremost, Kango Roshi was a tremendous advocate for Zazen practice. You know, he said, there's nothing like it. This is incredibly special. There's nothing else that will help us find our way, see ourselves like Zazen practice. It's non-intellectual. It's just returning to who we really are and letting go of all the chatter. So, you know, we would give at our weekly services, we would give Zazen instruction. We would first say disposition of the body, and whether you sit in kneeling posture, cross-legged, or in a chair, you would try to ground yourself on the earth, ground yourself on your cushion, ground yourself in this moment. That was what the body provided. That's the support the body provides. Also, sitting up nice and straight in all of those postures is very important, as this grounds you in wakefulness, and wakefulness in this moment, in this present condition. And so this is also very important. And then, of course, attitude of the mind. Monkey mind is at work. It likes to bounce about, but we always are relentless and determined and keep bringing the mind back to the present, keep coming back, you know. And so, but one aspect which was very important for Kango, and you can see why as soon as I describe it further, was breathing from the lower abdomen. You know, this area we call, it's known as hara. It's also known as the tanden, and it's the level, it's this area at the level of the navel and just below, which basically we define by the mudra, the cosmic mudra of our hands. And so I'd like to take just a segue and read just an excerpt from a Dharma talk that Kango Roshi gave. And we've got a collection, some of them in this book. We can let you know more about it in case you're interested in one of these. But I want to just read, this is Kango Roshi speaking. I think this was in like maybe 75. This was before I became even a disciple, but I was at the temple when he gave this talk. So I'm going to start here. He says, don't be hot-headed. What happens when you become angry? We're all familiar with this. It's a common everyday occurrence. We become angry, become excited, become anxious. We bubble upstairs. We completely lose our cool, right? Hot-headed. Now the idea is to draw this energy down and live from the tanden. When you do so, you discover a power, a confidence, a strength in your lives that is incomparable to anything you've experienced before. And remember, I said, I'm not talking about an occult experience. What I'm talking about is everyday life. It's just that we Western people never talk about this. We don't realize this. We're totally ignorant of this power. What I'm talking about is the other side of the coin, what we have inherited from our Eastern tradition. You are all adherents of Zen. Those of you who may just be visiting today are at least familiar with some form of Eastern philosophy, be it Zen, be it yoga, be it anything else. Now this power, this confidence that I am referring to is not something that one has. It is something in which one stands. He's saying this is innate. Now that's a big difference. A lot of people really are looking for power to overwhelm others. Yeah, I think so. Though many of us would be satisfied with the power, the strength, just to get through our daily lives. But remember what I just said, this is not power that one gets. It is a power, confidence in which one stands. This comes about through a very specific training method, the practice of Zazen, which on the surface seems very simple. A few weeks ago, a newcomer was here and he was quizzing me as to the Zen philosophy, Zen practice. He stayed for the Zazen period and he talked afterwards. I could tell that he was dissatisfied. He then put on a little smile and said, "Is that all? Is that all there is to it?" I said, "Yes, that's all. And it is all if you look at it superficially. But those of you who have put work and effort into your practice know that outwardly that may be all, but it's not all. A Zen temple is a spiritual battlefield. It requires a life of diligence, of hard work, as all of you who are sincere know. You know that much. What I'm trying to do today is take you one step further and make you more conscious, more aware of a life lived from the Tanden. So we practice Zazen and we ask, what is the instruction as far as the mental disposition, the disposition of the mind in Zazen? And Dogen Zenji instructs us, look inwardly at the rise and fall of thoughts as they occur. Do not try to suppress your thoughts. Do not attempt to direct your thoughts. Do nothing. Just observe. Just observe. Then you come to the instruction for breathing. Breathe from the diaphragm. But after sitting for a while, after your sitting becomes ripe, you recognize an integration between body and mind. There is one step further that you must go, and this is putting strength in the Tanden. Because there is a state of mind that some of you have experienced, but some of you haven't yet. There is a point that you reach in Zazen practice where there is thoughtlessness. There is no thought. You experience a state of no thought. Then from this point, go one step further. Without thinking, feeling the strength in the Tanden, tremendous power opens to you and you live, you breathe, you act, you go through life, and all decisions come from the Seikat Tanden, the spiritual field. This is that one step beyond. Until you develop this through your sitting, through your breathing, you will always be on the outside looking in. Things will always be problematic for you in your sitting. You'll always hanker for that strength, that freedom, that confidence that you know is somewhere. You've always known that it exists. That's what brought you to Zen in the first place. When sitting in Zazen, keep directing yourself in terms of Tanden, of emanating from the spiritual field. The first thing you want to do is lower the shoulders. So many times when observing people sitting in Zazen, I say to them, always relax your shoulders. The next thing is to loosen your belly. Forget about your beautiful Western posture with the flat belly. Allow the belly to expand. And then a third step, put strength in the belly. Not thought, because all preconceived notions will be wrong. You will just create another bind for yourself. So now we have sitting. See, live in the center of gravity. Sit, breathe, be in the tanda. Now let me say a few words about the breath. This is very important because it is really the key to developing the tanda. As I've said many times to you, when instructing you in Zazen, most of us breathe from the thorax. Where here in the Western world, we breathe from the upper portion of the body. Where when we become excited, how do we breathe? From the chest. Breathe lower from the tanda. How? Don't breathe, let the breath happen. Again, this is very simple, but listen to what I'm saying. We're always too conscious of breathing during Zazen. We are doing the breathing. The breathing is being done by us. We are, in a sense, manipulating our breaths. I'm talking about sitting and reaching a point within our being where we have the guts to let go, to let the breathing happen. This is the same thing as Dogen's instruction. Observe the rise and fall of thought as they occur. But now I'm transferring this to the breath. Observe the inhalations and exhalations as they occur without interfering, without guiding. When you do this very casually, but very definitely, you put strength in the abdominal area. So when you breathe from the tanden, you let the breath occur. Try that. Try that in your practice and see what happens. See if your perpetual hunting and looking, despite the fact that you've been practicing, many of you for years, doesn't dissolve itself somewhere. So I'll leave it right there. I think that's kind of the heart of what he is speaking about relative to the tanden. And you can see how emphatic he is and about it. And this is very much his speaking style. We have some of his recorded talks available, and you can really see how he delivered and the enthusiasm with which he conveyed himself. And so anyway, I think hopefully that will give you some information that will be useful and helpful in finding your way in your Zazen practice. You know, I wanted to say a few more things. I do want to give a few minutes for any questions that you may have. So I think we have just a little time yet. But, you know, our order is called Silent Thunder Order. This comes from the Japanese word mokurai, which means the same thing. And so this for Kongo, and by the way, when Kongo died, when he passed, we gave him the posthumous name of mokurai. And so, but he, you know, for him, it's like, think about silent thunder and think about our Zazen practice and think about sitting in Zazen in stillness, in silence, quiet, grounded, but the thunder comes from the intensity and the enlivening effect that Zazen has on us as we let go of all the energy wasting, chasing activity. This enthusiasm, our innate wisdom and enthusiasm reveals itself. So I think mokurai, silent thunder, is just I've always been very fond of it, but it's just a wonderful term and name for our order, because it very, very much points to Zazen and our experience in Zazen. So a few other things to share with you about Kongo Roshi, and I think you'll kind of catch a theme, you know, kind of running through this. It's like, how do you live in this world? How do we take care of business? How do we keep moving forward? How do we not get overwhelmed? And the context, you know, this is in the big city of Chicago. You know, it's a lot was happening in Chicago. You know, it's kind of a rat race. You're racing to work, taking the bus, taking the train, getting to work, all kinds of responsibilities, challenges, and you know, you don't have any time. You're running around, and maybe you find your way home at some point late at night or whenever. This is everybody's experience, you know, to a large degree. And so, how do you find balance in this? And so, Kongo Roshi really liked the image of the smelting process. You know, when you make really strong steel. So what happens is, first you have iron, and you take the iron, you put it in the furnace, you expose it to the furnace, you bring it out, you hammer on it, you beat on it, and then you take it out, then you put it in the cold water. Then you take it out, go through the same process again. Maybe you fold it over. You know, strong swords were made so that you would hammer them out, then you would fold the metal over and go through the process again. And it would get very strong. And so he likened this to our life in the big city. You know, we go into the day with our best effort, and we try to do what we can as skillfully as possible. And maybe we come home a little beat up or exhausted, but we come back to our zazen. You know, it's like going into the cold water. And we have some perspective in our zazen. We reaffirm ourselves in our practice. And then next morning we go back in and we go into the fire and the hammer of the day, but then we keep coming home. And Kongo would say, this is how we make strong zazen practitioners. So very interesting, I think, image. Another example is the samurai. You know, Kongo Roshi never glorified warfare any way, shape, or form. Never, ever, ever. But the Zen religion of the samurai warrior was Zen is that religion. This is the religion of the samurai. They cultivated complete selflessness in zazen, no fear, beyond self-grasping. Roshi found this to be a wonderful, inspiring image for all of us Zen practitioners. We are all confronted with many challenges each day. We may allow doubt, fear, fatigue to weaken our resolve. Zazen can be a tremendous aid in cultivating selflessness, fearlessness, and energy that permits us to act, speak, and live genuinely and deeply from the center of our being without any reservation, freeing us to just what needs to be done, free of habitual self-doubt, free of habitual second-guessing, free of excessive self-analyzation. So Kongo Roshi would say, living with absolute self-confidence. You know, this is what Zen practice can help us foster. And this absolute self-confidence is not some bravado. This absolute self-confidence comes from, this is our original nature. What is beating us down is our own self-doubt, our own self-imposed delusions. That is, you know, we are our own worst enemy sometimes. And so this is what Zazen helps us liberate from, just as with the samurai warrior. Just to do things to the complete extent of your ability. We are not worried about results. We're not putting energy into thinking about results. We're putting all of our energy into our intentions and executing on those intentions. Okay. I've got one more thing, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. And this was I think this is really useful, and I think some of you may be aware of this and familiar with this, but this was a teaching that Kongo Roshi really was fond of. It's from the Dhammapada, so it comes from the historical Buddha. And here's what he would say. Here's what he said, and I'll plan it just the way that we normally see it in the Dhammapada when we read that text. which it's a collection of some of the Buddha's earliest teachings. So plant a thought, reap an act. So plant a thought, reap an act. Plant an act, okay, reap a habit. Plant a habit, reap a character. Plant a character, reap a destiny. So I think the efficacy of this probably jumps out right away at us. But I think if we, for an example, let's just bring this into our Zazen practice. You know, if we plant a thought, maybe we've heard about Zen, think it sounds interesting, and we do something about it. We actually go to a Zen temple, or we find a pillow and we read in a book, and we try practicing Zen. And so that's plant a thought, reap an act. Plant that act. Now, if we plant Zazen and make it something we do, then we are reaping a habit. As we reap the habit of daily Zazen practice, this is helping our character by letting go of our own self-doubts, our own delusions, our own ignorance. And so this is reaping and developing our true character. And as we plant that character, this is what defines all of our actions in life. And this, we then reap our destiny. So I think this is really a very nice saying started from historical Buddha. It's quite useful, I think, very encouraging around anything that we are trying to achieve and trying to do. So let me bring this home. Kango Roshi would always encourage his disciples by saying, a student should stand on the shoulder of his teacher. Reflect on the great contributions that our ancestors have made that we are standing on today. Remember the great Bodhisattva vow to absolutely continue our Zen way. The Bodhisattva practice is wholehearted practice. Dive in. Cultivate the present moment each day. The present moment has limited possibilities and reflects your true nature, your Buddha nature. Don't spend any effort being concerned about results. The chasing mind, this is just the chasing mind. Put all of your energy into your wholehearted practice. In this way, we keep our intentions and practice pure. In this way, we deeply bow with respect to our ancestors and acknowledge their kindness and continue on in their spirit for the benefit of all beings. So I think Kango Roshi's knowledge, his mastery of many subjects, from music to philosophy, from meditation to the yogas, Qigong to Tai Chi Chuan, they were truly amazing. However, I really feel that his conviction, his compassion, his humanity, these are what he is most loved for and known for and respected for. So I do think Kango Roshi is a very important teacher in our lineage. And I think it's very important that everybody expose themselves to his teaching. And so I hope I have contributed to that cause tonight. And so I hope this will be helpful for you in all of your efforts to find your way. So I think I'm going to close right there, and would be very interested if there's any questions, comments that anybody would like to bring up. And to give you a moment, we do have, there's some information. If there's a link right below my talk in the guide, it's being brought up right here. It tells you how you can get one book, and you can get access to about 50 of his Dharma talks. And they are in really high quality audio. They are being housed by the Northwestern University, a very nice project that they put together for us. The Zen Buddhist Temple of Chicago is now in the same community in Evanston with Northwest University. So they've been very kind and a nice association. So please, if you're interested, print that off. You can contact me for a copy of that book. But anyway, I encourage you to learn more about Kango Roshi and his teaching.
Yep. And we also pasted the information if you want to grab it in the chat as well. And this is the time, again, Sensei Zenku, thank you so much for your knowledge, your wisdom, and your teaching. And this is the time that we open it up. And please, if you have questions, either raise your hand or just come off of mute. And we welcome questions to Sensei related to the teaching or in his experience and him sharing with Kango Roshi. But we welcome, Sangha, your feedback and your thoughts.
No questions? What?
I'll start us off, Sensei.
I explained everything that clearly?
Yeah, you did. You did. Quick question. Quick question. Can you speak a little bit about your experience when you first recognized something very piercing in Kango Roshi? Was that, can you speak a little bit about that? Because I caught several moments when you had a really deep connection with what you were reading, and I could see the connection you had with him. Can you speak a little bit about that recognition of what you saw in Kango that made you want to be his disciple?
Yeah, he was very dynamic. You never had any doubt about his determination, to teach, to try to help people. And it was very, very palpable. There was never any doubt about it. That's one thing I can say. Another thing I can say is that, I studied with him for better part of, I knew him for almost 30 years and studied with him, all the time, week in, week out for many of those years. So I got to know him very well, became very, very good friends. And so I just, I learned a lot about letting go of our, he gave a talk once that is titled, We Are Our Own Worst Enemy. And so it's a very good talk. And, how do we get out of our own way? How do we do that? One of the examples that for me that is probably most poignant is I worked downtown in the Loop, in Chicago, and I had a fairly interesting job, a fairly demanding job. So I had to give talks in front of a crowd, of upper managers and things like that. Well, when I was younger, I had a little bit of stage fright kind of phenomenon, and Kango Roshi very much helped me get through that issue because he experienced it himself when he was a jazz musician. And so using Zazen practice to just focus on what is happening. You want to prepare your material, but then when it comes time to present it, do not allow any doubts to come up in your mind. Do not entertain anything that undermines what you're trying to do. Just stay in the moment, and practices like that, which you can see come right out of some of the things that I've shared about him with you. And so putting that into action for myself and learning how to overcome this, let's say, a little bit of stage fright that I had brought it upon myself. I was my own worst enemy. I learned how to unravel that. And so it was quite a liberating experience, just at a very practical level, on how do I do my job, these kind of things. So some very personal encounters, but validating them. It's just like the historical Buddha said, don't trust what I say. You go make sure it's right by validating it for yourself. This is the challenge we all have. We all should look at what is being said and where the finger is pointing. But if you want to find out for real, you have to go there yourself and follow in that direction. Anyway, I'll say that about that.
Mokyo.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Sensei Zenku. It was wonderful to hear this. And did you actually live with him? Were you living in the same place?
No. What the circumstances were, the Zen Buddhist Temple of Chicago, when I first became a disciple, was, as I say, in Lincoln Park on a very busy Halsted Street, a really nice part of town, actually. It got so good later that we had to leave. But anyway, in just terms of affluence, it became too expensive tax-wise for us to stay there. But it was a 3-flat building. The first floor was the temple. So you came up the little stairs and went right into the temple. The second story, that's where Congo and his wife Dolores and his son Aaron lived. They rented out the 3rd floor, so they had some income from that. They owned the building when I was a disciple. But my wife and I and my children, when they were born, we lived on the south side of Chicago. And so I would either get in my car or I would take public transportation, and it would be maybe 20 minutes from the south side up to the temple and driving. And so it was not a big deal. But I would see him, 2 or 3 times a week. Usually we would get together not only at the temple, but sometimes socially as well. And but no, nobody lived at the temple except for Kongo Roshi himself.
But a lot of time spent together.
Yeah. No, very wonderful time. I'll tell you another story if you don't ask any more questions. I'm just joking. We're just about out of time. But anyway, I hope it was helpful and informative, and feel free to.
Sensei, I think we have Tessen's coming off of.
Oh, good.
Zenku Sensei, thank you so much for wonderful retrospective of Kongo Roshi, and what an honor having studied together with you with Kongo Roshi, and especially thank you for really waking up the essence of Kongo Roshi in your talk, and really the marrow of his teaching.
Thank you, Tessa. Very nice. Thank you.
We have benefit of again, our senseis have direct, really close lineage to Matsuoka and Kongo Roshi. Sensei Zenku, Tessen, and also Katsuryu Bill Cooper. We always love to hear the talks and the references to our ancestors as the retreat is about. So we hope to hear the essences of their lineage running through your talks and through your experiences. So we appreciate each and every one of you sharing the stories. It brings our ancestors to life.
Very good. What I would say is, normally around the Dharma talk, we open with the Dharma opening verse. And of course, I hope that I apologize that we didn't get the opening Dharma verse done, but let's get better at this as we go along. This is a practice, and let's get better at this. So let's have all of our speakers, let's start with the Dharma opening verse. But why don't we close with the four great vows, which is our Dharma closing verse, and then we'll take just a short break and move into a couple of periods of Zazen.
And as we do this together, we'll allow the person who's speaking to lead, and we'll all stay on mute if that's cool. So thank you, everyone.
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Very good. Thank you all for listening.